summary, first of all, of what's the salient points or points that were raised in the Maimon now, and that is, again, that is that in the narrative of the Parsha, Yosef is Mashpia, Yehuda is Makabel. In the Haftorah, Hashem's promise unto a unified Jewish people, Avdi Dovid, Nasi Lahem La'olam, Dovid, namely Yehuda, is the Mashpia. So what's at play here? What at play here is Malchus and Zoh, the six midas above it, the Mashpia. Most specifically, Yesod, as the Maim explains. Why Yesod is the Mashpia? Because Yesod is rooted in Keser. Now, which level of Keser? The external level of Keser. Just to address that for a moment, why is the Yesod Mashpia? Yesod means to bond, and bond means empathy. And to really connect to somebody else is an extraordinary feat. And it requires going beyond self to reach into somebody else's world. And because Yesod is rooted in the level of Kesed, the transcendent level, which is not bound and limited, therefore Yesod has this property of connecting to another, of one and one becoming one. That's what Yesod is. Nonetheless, Yesod's connection to Keser, which grants it this property of being the Mashpia, is really only the external level of Keser, as the Maim will explore later, further in greater detail. In order to connect, this is the huge paradox and the irony. Truth always comes in irony and paradox, right? So in order for Yesod to really access Pnimius HaKeser, the Etzem Evolikos, to be explained further, this is Dafka through Malchus, the one that Yesod was Mashpia to. Turns out in the end that Malchus the Makabel unlocks within Yesod a essential level that Yesod itself could not access, that the Mashpia itself himself could not access. I mean, this is played out in many areas of Hashpah and Kabbalah and being the recipient in the classroom. For example, the teacher. At the end of the day, the teacher is a teacher. He's the bestower. But Mitamida Yosi Mikulam, the end of the day, it's only via the Talmidim that the teacher himself grasps the essence of the concept that he would never grasp if he never had to teach it. And Dafka teach it to a Talmud that's not his world. Because if the Talmud is his world, he remains in his world. He's sharing, not teaching. But teaching, a true teacher, the end of the Talmidim give him more, in a sense, than he gives them. It's only via the Talmidim that the etzem of the seichel, of the idea, the real essence of the idea that he really grasps in a conscious way. And that's talking in the world of seichel, but we're talking now the world of elikus, or the world at large, the way Hashpah works. So now let's hit the pause button and now summarize what he said in this ois. So there's three matzavim. There are three states of the way Hashem relates to creation, of reality. There's ishtalshalus. There's ishtalshalus, and ishtalshalus emerges as a result of the great tzimtzum and the veil and the contraction and the screens and the masks that separate higher than ishtalshalus bli gvul, of which keser is a part, and gvul. That's the normal seder in Yonim. There's higher and there's lower. And the higher and the lower are not connected, especially since we're talking, relatively speaking, bli gvul, infinite, and gvul. That's the normal seder. But then there comes the hashpah. Hashpah means where the upper is getting down and involved in the lower. We're giving. We're giving that which you don't normally have. That's the story in Parshas Vayigash, where Yosef is mashpia to the people. The people are ishtalshalus, and Yosef is Yisoid, and he's mashpia. That's a wonderful thing. That's not the normal state. The giver retains what he has for himself. There's the haves and the have-nots. That's the normal state of affairs. But that's not what's the purpose of creation. That's the stage. That's the world. We've got to fix the world. So fix the world, number one, is so the ones that have to give to the ones that don't. So that's the first state. And that's embodied in Yosef, the mashpia. He is, as we said earlier, we started this morning, he's the union of Yesoid. He can really connect, empathy, really become one with the Mekabel. That's because in Yesoid is rooted a transcendent level, which allows one to go beyond oneself and reach into the world of another. And that's a wonderful thing. That's the second matzav. That's the hashpah, and that's reflected in the story again, where Paroi appoints Yosef. Paroi is Kesed, and he appoints Yosef, empowers Yosef. That's the external level of Kesed. So far, is empowering Yosef to be the mashpia and the provider. Pircha Yishak Kol Ami. Through your word, all my people will be sustained. But now Yehuda is saying to Yosef as follows. Yehuda is Malchus, the recipient. Till now, you were secondary to Paroi, as Paroi said explicitly to Yosef. I point you over, the overlord of Egypt, but the throne remains mine. That's Pnimius HaKesed. Now Yosef says, you are destined to be like Paroi, dafke through the hashpah and the effect, and that which Malchus is ma'ored by you, the recipient. So this is no longer you just being mashpia, but you receiving from Malchus. Because the root of Malchus is higher than yours even. You're rooted in chitzonius hakesed, but the recipient, as the mind will explain using dibur as the model, because dibur is Malchus in the nefesh ha'adam. So Ki kamoicha ke Paroi, says Yehuda to Yosef, you will be like Paroi. When be Adoni, be within me, you will be mashpia, I Malchus, and recognizing the maila of Malchus, being open to the maila of the recipient of the Talmud, of the recipient of the, and so on, all of the manifestations. We'll speak about Dibur. Then Zoh becomes connected not just to Chitzonius HaKesed, which is its natural overt source, which isn't so obvious either, because the first matzav is a disconnect. It's when your side opens up to be mashpia, to want to give, to want to help. So then your side draws on its source, which is Chitzonius HaKesed. That's the second matzav beyond the natural order of things. And now the third matzav, that it turns out that the Mekabel has even a higher source. The Mekabel is rooted in the etzem of Kesed, Pnimius HaKesed, and that's unlocked through the hashpah of Yesoid, and then Yesoid becomes the recipient of that source in their oneness. As I said 2 shiurim ago, all this plays itself out in marriage on many levels, and it's really the subject matter of the Maimel HaChadaydi that the Chassan says before this all begins, before he veils her, Hashpah Chitzonius. That really is Yosef sustaining the people, Hashpah Chitzonius. But then there's the Yichud Pnimi that follows. The model is very simple. Before they're married, they're just separate worlds. Don't even know each other. They know each other. Conceivably, usually. The Shadchan introduces them, and it's Vet ganze Meise, but till then they're separate worlds. Yesoid and Malchus. That's the Seder. Now Yesoid is being mashpia. Now the unity is now happening, beginning. So Yesoid is mashpia, that's the veiling. That's a chitzonius thing. And he's the mashpia, and she's covered, in fact, concealed, pointing to her source being hidden. That's Yosef sustaining the people. But then that's all the achana to the yichud pnimi, where the mamash become one. And there, the source of the feminine is revealed, which is much higher than the male. And the male is now the fortunate recipient of that experience via her, even though externally he's being mashpia. And that's true on all the levels of their relationship. And as I said the other day, it's not once, it's not when they got married, it's an ongoing process, because the chiddush of marriage is that it's kiddushin is an ongoing relationship, anew every moment. It doesn't happen once and then is nurtured and maintained, but it's recreated every second. That's really the secret to marriage, to really understanding it, it's as I said the other day, friendships have to be nurtured and tended to. Children have to be tended to. A garden, every relationship has to be tended to. If it's just ignored, it withers or separates. But marriage is more than tended to. A marriage is mamish, a reconsideration of the whole relationship every day, as if it's anew. You're just marrying for the first time ever today. Mamish says every moment. And if we recognize that it's a fundamentally new relationship every moment, it has to be, because conceivably it could completely separate. You can't separate from your children ever. You share a common DNA there forever your children, but conceivably there can be separation, become total strangers. So it requires the constant, even though forever there's some bond, and a very essential bond, but that's at an essence level. Or to say that marriage requires, therefore, it gets into the question of second marriages, etc., which is not our subject. It's complex and very nuanced. We're speaking in general terms. So the conclusion of the point that I'm saying is that marriage is a relationship that is fundamentally novel and new, and a chiddush every moment. And the chiddush every moment of it is this, that the mekabel, the recipient, the isha, malchus, embodied in Yehuda, the feminine, the root is in the etzem, in the very essence of godliness. And that's why, and he's being mashpia, in the end, he's the big recipient of her connection in their oneness. Okay, so just pointed at it many times. This is also reflected in the order of creation, and who's the final end of creation is Chav. Right? Man is the final creation because man is the pinnacle of creation, comes last. It's again Malchus, it's the bigger picture coming last, but Seif Masev Machshava Tchila. Shabbos comes last, but it's also rooted deepest, likewise man. But within man, it's the feminine within man, it's Chava, who is the ultimate last and therefore rooted in the ultimate height, the essence. We talked about why you test Kislev, right? You test the Gematria Chava, that's what Chassidus is. So this is Megala, that's. Okay, so now let's just summarize what's really critical now for the flow to get into Eis Daled. The three matzovim, where every world is on its own, Blikvold, and even in Ishtalshalos, Yisoid is Yisoid, Malchus is Malchus. There is an interaction, but it's very limited. Very limited. So then comes the Ashpa of Yisoid, that's the first change. The Ashpa of Yisoid, that's Yosef appointed by Parai. Now comes, but Yisoid is still the Mashpia, and Malchus is the recipient. But then there comes the appreciation that Yehuda is being Ba'ed and being Megala, that no, that Davke Mitzad, the Mail of Malchus, and Yisoid recognizing the Mail of Malchus is the source of Malchus, which is higher than Yisoid. Again, Yisoid is rooted in Chitzon Yisakesa, Malchus is rooted in Pnimi Yisakesa, and then come Meicha Kapara. Then you'll touch Pnimi Yisakesa through Bi Adoni, through Yashpa and oneness with Malchus, embodied by Yehuda. Now let's see and understand this. And the Maim is going to use the model of speech. So Dibur, the faculty of speech, by which we communicate to the world outside of us, that's Malchus. So Malchus has no overt characteristic of its own, just like a word. A word is just a container. It's what's invested in the container that makes the word meaningful. It's just a sound. It's the collision of the 5 organs of speech in one way or another. It's the doimim. A word is called a doimim, as you said before, as opposed to tzimeach, which represent the emotions, which are live and living. A word's an inanimate object. It's a stone with which you build a home. The letters are called oishes, are called avonim. In Sefer Yitzhak, the most primary work of Kabbalah, you put the letters together and you build a word and you build a home. Another word, and you build a whole. But the letters themselves are meaningless. It's just the way, the significance attached to them and the order in which they're placed, that they create containers for ideas. So we're going to use speech. That's what Malchus is. So speech is, that's why king governs through speech. And we're going to say tonight, Malchus peh. Malchus is mouth. So let's explore speech. It's very nuanced, very deep. Let's, with Hashem's help, let us explore it. So, Eis Dalet. Excuse me a moment. You have to understand. What's the question that introduces now? This that Yisoid draws on Keser. And we said that means what? The ability to connect to another draws on a transcendent level Keser. So why is Yisoid drawing on Keser? In order to be mashpia and get into somebody else's world to whatever degree, you have to draw on Keser on a transcendent level. And yet, if Yafal Piken, nonetheless, so he's mashpia, and he's drawing on Keser. Yet, why is it that it's only that so why is it only the lower level of Keser? Keser relates already to the finite construct of Ishtalshalos. And what is added? This is what Yehud is saying. Malchus is now talking. Malchus is saying that's dafka within me. Malchus Biadoni means that in Malchus is drawn dashbav Yisoid. What's changing there? Only now the essence of Keser is drawn. There is a hashpa already. There is. Yisoid is acting as mashpia. In the first part of the story again, al picha yishak kol ami. And in order to do that, he's empowered by Parah. Yisoid is rooted in, again, the ability to go beyond self. And he has to draw on a transcendent level. So it's all there. What is added now? What is this business Yehud is saying? That's only chitzonius hakesa. For you to touch the pnimis hakesa, kamboicha kaparoi, that's dafka B, but he's already giving. So he's not, but now what he's saying is that Yehud is saying you have to recognize, as we kind of were saying this before, the mile of Malchus. So what does all this mean? Let's understand it. So we're going to use, again, the model of Dibur. Friends, the language is very subtle, so let's try and get it. First of all, I need to know if we're all on the same page, following, and getting no reaction. Yeah, okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. So where are we now? The fifth line of Eis Dalet. Now the language is going to be like what he's saying, but let's try and get it here. The Inyan bi'adenihu, when Yehuda says, be mashpia in me, so what is he talking about? The focus is not you be mashpia to me. Ella the focus is, in simple language, appreciate who you're giving to. That's the chiddush. Actually, I'm saying this, till now, but the mind will develop it further. Appreciate who you're giving to. Be adini, as opposed to, there's nothing to appreciate. You've got nothing. I'm giving you. You appreciate me, as opposed to the natural seder of mashpia makabel. I'm doing you this favor. I'm getting out of my comfort zone. I'm drawing on a transcendent level to do that. So who owes who? Who? The makabel is in complete debt to the mashpia. Yehuda is introducing an opening and understanding and appreciation. There's a much deeper dynamic going on over here, and that is that you have to recognize the maila of the makabel, of which you in the end will be makabel and attain your greatest heights. That's the nakuda. Okay, let's see the words of the Maimer again.
A wake-up call in the marriage.
Okay, yeah. So let's see the words in the Maimer. Yashloimer, the Inyan bi'adenihu. Malchus is saying, "Be mashpia to me." The focus, Hu loisha yisoid mashpia lemalchus. The emphasis here is not you. Please give me. Malchus nimshach hashefa mayisoid bi'adeni. That you should recognize, where is this going? Who are you giving to? You're giving to Malchus. Right, now let's continue in the. I just want to say that the whole mile of Malchus is that Malchus doesn't trumpet its mile. Here, this is Torah, and Torah is being megalit. As we pointed out the other day, it's only 3,300 or whatever years later that so this is megalit, what the pasuk is saying here. It was a secret for the longest time, that the makabel is really rooted deeper. And so she's veiled. It occurs to me as I'm speaking to you, as I mentioned earlier, that he veils her. A lot of significance to the veiling, but amongst it all is her bittul, her humility, but that her source is not obvious. It's hidden. It's a hidden source, hidden from him, hidden from your sight. He's not seeing her face. And in the union, which if this is achana, then comes chuppah and yichud and the union, that's when the pnimius is revealed. So let's see again. The metaphor is dibur. Now, I just wish to point out also that speech is a uniquely feminine characteristic, a feminine property. The Gemara says that Hashem granted humanity 10 measures of speech. 1 was given to man and 9 to women. Why? Because that's what Malchus is, as we will see. We'll see and understand profoundly the power of words. Let's see. So va'gilu the kesesh nimshachadesh hamalchus mekabeles hashefem yisoid. So the gilui that's summoned forth from Kesed, through the fact that the emphasis, the focus is Malchus being the recipient, as opposed to Yisoid being the giver. Who Gilui Naili Yos is a much greater Gilui than of Kesed. The Kesed Shemshachadesh HaYisoid Mashpil Malchus, much greater than the emphasis being, the focus being Yisoid as the giver. Greater than that is the emphasis and the appreciation of who the recipient, Malchus the receiver. Now comes explanation, as it is the Nefesh Adam in the power of speech. As is often the case, initially, the point of the whole mashal is to make it easier for us, but then it makes it more difficult to understand the mashal, but things are kind of clear till now in a general way. Now, as he gets into the depth of it with the mashal, it'll become more challenging, but at the end, understanding the mashal will have a much richer, deep understanding of the subject. Yeah.
Aside from the recognition of the greatness of Malchus, the part of it, the fact that Malchus is the Eider, the Hashpa from Yesod, it seems like that a little bit.
That's what it means.
Yeah. The Hashpa comes from Yesod, but it comes initiated by Malchus. It comes because of Malchus.
To some degree. Yeah, Malchus is Lav Dafke.
Look at the last sentence, like practically what's the difference between the Gilui the Kesef Nimshach Holiday and Malchus Megdal Meshave Yisrael versus the Gilui the Kesef Nimshach Holiday Yisrael Mashpia Malchus? What's the difference?
So I'm saying is in the recognition. In the recognition of scenario A is you say it's being mashpia, you don't have, I'm giving you. And B is you said recognizing the mila that's in Malchus. Now you're saying this Malchus have the ma'ira that Indian.
So the Indian of that there's a hashba bichlal.
Yeah, the reason I'm hesitating is that just Malchus's very being is ma'ira that. The very nature of Malchus is ma'ira it. As the pasuk says, "Ve'al no chukosech ve'al no
Ve'al ishech
chukosech, and you will desire your husband." She doesn't have to do anything.
But that's that's only the external part.
No, it's not. No, it's not. And I just want to say that that's not something she needs to do. She is. Okay, let's go further now. And let's see how it is in Dibur. I'm saying in simple language, you shouldn't have to ask for this.
For sure.
So what does it mean, Ma'ira? Her very being is Ma'ira. And that's what he has.
When that's Begula, that's when.
That's what you say it has to recognize. This calling and this the Maila that she has. Let's see it in Dibur. Let's see it in the Maimon is going to give us the whole model in Dibur. In the power of speech, again, the feminine property of every human being. One of the primary feminine property, Bina, Dibur. Let's see as follows. What is the moshel for Malchus in Keiches HaNefesh or Keich HaDibur? The faculty of speech, Malchus Peh, which we're going to say tonight in Pasach Eliyah. And amongst the reasons, not giving all of the reasons, but amongst the reasons that Dibur is the unit of Malchus. And that is, so the difference between Dibur, speech, and all the other faculties is the all of the other faculties are for the person himself. That's him, that's me. But speech, again, as we always say, you don't need to speak on a desert island, no one to talk to. You need everything else to be a human being, your feelings and your mind and your heart. But to talk, you don't have to talk. I mean, you end up talking as you go crazy, so you're going to talk to the trees. But in principle, the holding in of Dibur is in the brackets, so the holding in of speech is for the other. So I already kind of really addressed this, that to connect to somebody else, which is what speech is to begin with, to get into their world, you got to go beyond yourself. Or you're just talking and they don't hear you. There's words and there's words. But overall, the whole idea of the word is me connecting to somebody else knowing, experiencing what's in my head and what's in my heart. giving it to somebody else. We say to him as he goes, and they say further, moreover, how does the other hear the words? The words have to leave me. They're going to go out. And become separate from the person who spoke. And now they're being heard by somebody else, and they're now in your memory, in your head, in your heart. That's what the word is. The word is a separate thing. We can record it, in fact. No, once you've said it, you can't pull it back. So therefore, that's the word itself. Now he says, not the word, but the very faculty, the ability to speak. The ability to speak within the nefesh adam. Before he speaks. Here comes the salient point here, even though this faculty of speech, the ability to speak, is still within the person. I haven't said a word yet. Nonetheless, what is this koyach within me that I carry within? The power to be able to communicate, to talk. Within myself, there is this property that I can transcend self and connect to another. So stop the Moishe right here, because he ended it so far right here. And what did he say? Very simply. He said there's the word from the outside in. Looking at the word is separate from the person. What I'm talking to you, I'm expressing ideas or emotions. A piece of me is put into a word, and that's separate from me and shot out to you. Goodbye. And again, you can't retrieve it. So what is a word then? It's going out of self and connecting to another. That's the word itself. The koyach, the ability within the nefesh to formulate words. And it's more than formulate. It's to consider, and it's more than to consider, but to have a relationship with another. That's the koyach hadibur. And that we're going to learn. To have a relationship with another means to go beyond self. That's a very deep place in the nefesh. That's the etzem, ha-neshama, ha-nefesh, higher than the conscious construct, which is, as Descartes said, I think, therefore I am. I can't know anything else, really. But koyach hadibur is rooted in the etzem ha-nefesh, and it's from there that I can go beyond the I am and the touch, the you, the world. That's the true beligvulness, essence of the neshama, not bound to a particular construct, first and foremost being the construct of consciousness of self. Okay, these are big words. We'll revisit them based on Hashem on Monday. I don't know if this is good news or bad news, but Monday we're still at the 8:30. For me, it's good news. 8:30, and then Tuesday, which is a fast day. That's out of potatoes, I think. We'll be back at Dow 6:20. All right, so Be'ez Hashem will continue. Okay, we need to move through this because I want to start the achanas to Yud Shvat. Okay, it is what it is. It is what it is. Okay, today's story.